My story comes out of Law 360. It has to do with bankruptcy, which, yawn, yawn. I always tell Gretchen, have your espresso now because this shit's inside baseball and it makes people bored. We had a decision out of a bankruptcy court here in California, and the headline is Pod Company's Chapter 11 again is okayed over U.S. trustees protest. Now, my firm helps businesses liquidate, buy, sell assets, mergers and acquisitions, things like that. And it's not uncommon to run across a company that is underwater. In fact, it's probably to be expected in California. If some company's up for sale, it's underwater. And the question is, what do you do about that? In traditional business, you have the bankruptcy courts available, and you file a petition in bankruptcy, and a trustee comes in and gathers all your assets up, identifies all your creditors, and then you put together a plan to liquidate or reorganize, and the creditors are paid what they're going to get, and then they don't like it too bad. And the business is then off the hook. It's out of trouble from a creditor-debtor standpoint. Now, this case involves what used to be called Lowell Herb Company, and they were manufacturers of products here in California. They sold them to dispensaries, and I don't have all the financials in front of me. It doesn't really matter. They were upside down. And so they ceased operations in 2021. They transferred their intellectual property, which is basically their trademark and their names, to a Canadian cannabis company for a little over 9% of the company's shares, which is worth $35 million. About a year and a half after they ceased operations, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is a liquidation. We're going to gather up all your debts, all your assets, and then we're going to liquidate them all, pay your creditors off, and then you're done. Okay? U.S. trustee, the bankruptcy trustee, filed a motion to dismiss last year, November of last year, I think. And the court said, hang on. Just because there's cannabis involved here doesn't mean we're going to dismiss. Okay? And then the trustee lost. The judge was not going to dismiss and allow the plan to go forward. The trustee filed a second motion to dismiss, and the court took another look at it and came up with the same conclusion. And they came up with the conclusion for some narrow reasons. First of all, Lowell had stopped doing any active cannabis business. And what they owned stock in what appeared to be a lawful cannabis corporation, which is operating in cannabis businesses in Canada lawfully. So they were no longer actively involved in weed, they owned stock. The trustee took the position that, oh no, this is a conspiracy to violate the Controlled Substances Act because you own stock in a company that's out slinging weed. And the court said, oh no, I'm not buying that. Okay, even though that's a possibility, it's not required that I dismiss for those types of assertions. The goal of bankruptcy is to get the most money to the creditors. If you keep dismissing these cases for a tenuous connection to cannabis, creditors lose out. Okay? And then the trustee tried to say, well, it's money laundering, and the court said, hang on, if we're going to administer it, the bankruptcy court is not guilty of money laundering. So get the hell out of here. Okay, so now that the court has approved the plan, what Hacienda is the company that is technically before the bankruptcy court, they're going to sell their stock in the Canadian company over time because they argue that if we dump it all at one time, it diminishes the value of the stock, and the creditors just will not get as much value as if you let us sell it over time. The court agreed to administer the sale of the stock over time to get maximum benefit to creditors. So the bankruptcy pundits are trying to figure out, what the hell does this mean? And it seems that if you stop being actively involved in cannabis for at least a year, that's at least one marker. And if your connection to cannabis is not direct, but it's more tenuous than that, and I don't know if anybody understands completely what that's going to mean, but Hacienda owns stock in a legal business in Canada that arguably violates United States law, and the court found that that's a tenuous enough connection to allow this to go through. I do not know what this is going to mean for going forward. because there's too many businesses out there that I've dealt with, either as an attorney or going after them to try to acquire them, where they're upside down and they just don't know what the hell to do. Receivership is the other area you can go to, but you lose control of your business. If your creditor starts suing you, the court can bring everybody in and try to assign assets to creditors and get people to agree to accept those and dismiss all the other charges. But bankruptcy, the bankruptcy court will bring an end to it. Debtor is let go with no remaining debt. The creditors get what they get, and you actually have a clean business after that. So I don't know what the answer is going to be, because without bankruptcy protection, people's investment in cannabis companies are very tenuous. You could lose it. And again, this is where you need a couple of espressos just to deal with this, because unless you're involved in a company upside down, this is boring as shit. It's like watching paint dry. But if you do have a cannabis company that's upside down and you need help liquidating assets or selling it, then this may be helpful to you. So that's the story for this morning. Throw it back at Liz and Jason. What do you guys have to say about this?
I have a quick question, Dale. Is the issue that they're trying to file for bankruptcy twice, or like what's the issue? What you
Well,
know?
the issue is that the trustee lost and didn't like it. So he made a second
Ah,
shot at it. Okay. They
got
filed
it.
bankruptcy September of last year, and the trustee filed for dismissal and didn't like their plan. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the court said,
Okay.
no, we're not going to dismiss this. And they came back at him again. The court said, no, we're not going to dismiss it. But
Mm-hmm.
Because he's trying to come back and say, hey, this is money laundering. They have all this stock in this Canadian weed company, and man, it's
well, when you
messy.
I'm surprised, Dale, that
money
they don't.
laundering statutes are allow for prosecutions for all kinds of tenuous shit in and around the cannabis industry. And we need some clarification of that also.
Well, Dale, I'm really surprised that the judge is even allowing this to proceed in this manner. I mean, because how I view it is he should throw all of the common stock into a receivership and just let them figure it out in there. To me, I don't see how they have any business talking about this even in a bankruptcy court, seeing as how they don't allow cannabis businesses to use that.
Well, first of all, bankruptcy has very limited jurisdiction. It
Mm-hmm.
can't order anything to receivership. It can either allow bankruptcy and a bankruptcy plan to be approved or not. That's basically the limit of it. And you're right, we have not gone to bankruptcy because a couple of cases just said absolutely not. If you're involved in cannabis, don't even try
Mm-hmm.
to come in the front door. You're not going to get there.
Exactly.
And this one, the trustee was told, hang on for a second. Federal statutes do not require that we dismiss for underlying criminal activity. They brought up Enron. They brought up PG&E out here with Aaron Brockovich.
Mm-hmm.
They brought up Bernie Madoff. It's like, dude, there's a lot of money out there that in a bankruptcy court was gained through illegal activities. So the bankruptcy courts are not required to dismiss because there's underlying criminal activity. You can divest. So it gets real geeky and wonky. But people out there running a business who can't pay their bills and the creditors are threatening to sue them, you're looking for every avenue you can to get out from underneath that and get some money back for your investors. And this might allow some small window in bankruptcy court.
This is a very interesting development. I imagine that a lot of cannabis companies will be using this as an alternative to receivership, because receivership is just the worst.
Well, yeah, you lose control of your
Mm-hmm.
business, and receivers are paid handsomely,
Yes, they
taking
are.
over your
They,
business.
they they are paid handsomely, and even the worst part of them being paid handsomely, Dale, is they can accrue mass amounts of debt for your business while they are in control and have absolutely zero liability.
I get it. And that's why when we sit down and talk to people whose business is underwater, there aren't a lot of good options.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm currently handling a couple of these where, the assets were sold and we had to work out detailed arrangements to be responsible for debts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still questionable whether that would hold up in court if it turns out you don't, get all these debts taken care of and somebody sues for not being paid. It's still not clear if we can protect the agreement to sell assets privately in a court of law because this is such a gray area. It's just frustrating, and there are no good answers. Receivership, you lose control, it costs you a shitload of money, and you end up, as you say, Jason, even more upside down. Okay, and try to do private agreements and get creditors to ratify that, or you all go to court and put together a dismissal plan that a court will sign off on.
Yeah.
That it stiffs creditors. The problem is you're not going to get full value for your debt,
No.
and people want full value. And there's the
People,
problem.
hey, people can want all the hell that they want, but the reality of it is that they're not going to get it, even in the best case scenario for them.
Well, and the industry here in California, as you know, Jason, they took off like, man, this is the Kentucky Derby. Everybody was running as fast as they can. No one was concerned about watching the bottom line of the businesses like they should. They had too many employees. They're paying too much. They got locked into triple net leases over $2 a square foot. I mean, shit like that is not sustainable in the long term. And all of a sudden, the price of product goes down to under $1 a gram, and you can't pay your bills.
Yep.
And I've had discussions with too many people where there's the bottom line, and everyone's fighting. What do we do here? And there are no good answers. That's the problem.
Very true. There is no good answers.
What are the no good answers? Before we move on to the next story, though, I would love to hear, Dale, what, obviously your advice is just put good business practices from the beginning for folks still wanting to enter into the cannabis industry. Do you have any other advice for people who still want to make a go at it? And so they don't find themselves.
If I have the opportunity to get there from the formation and foundation of these businesses, then we do a lot of educating of what these businesses are all about. You have to understand the regulations, the control group. I've gone so far as to recommend counseling for these people who are going to run these businesses, because if you don't know how to work together with a team to run a business, it's going to go under. Okay? Then you put together sound business structures with bylaws. Your debt is structured so that you understand it, and the investors are cool with the potentials for making money or not making money. Okay? That's what you need to do to get started. Bring accountants in, make sure you've got 280E covered, and you have to be as lean as you can be. When this got started, every business had 4 bud tenders to hold your hand and walk you around and tell you what weed was all about. And it's like, now, fuck you. Go on the internet and look it up. Come in and tell me what you want. Because I can't afford to have someone hold your hand and give you coffee while you come in and buy weed for us. These are just examples. People weren't thinking about a business acumen here. They were thinking about, I'm slinging weed, I'm going to make a lot of money until you don't. And then you've got debt coming out your ears. So there are ways to do this. I typically get brought in when there's a shit sandwich somebody has to eat. And it's like, okay, Dale, how do we make this shit sandwich taste, palatable enough? And there's not always a way to make it taste palatable. It's just a shit sandwich someone's got to eat.
Oh man, someone's gonna eat it. Make sure you get them a wet nap, Dale.
Yeah, I recommend barbecue sauce.
Wash it down.
Oh man, barbecue sauce for those cow dung pies, huh?
Sandwiches,
That's right. Cow dung pies.
Yeah.
There are a lot of hemp farmers, I think, eating cow dung pies in Texas.
Oh, there's going to be a lot more after this next farm bill comes out too.
Man,
What Liz, is that in Texas they have the saying that you're a lot of hat and not much cattle. And almost every
all hat, no
business I
cattle.
got involved with is you have these people that, a lot of hat and no cattle. Oh, I'm going to make all this money for you. Yeah. How? And that's where I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
All the sizzle, no steak, man. You
Yep.
got to stick your head up that bull's ass to know what you're working with. That's what we
Exactly.
say.
Yes, you do.
Exactly. Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt, you guys.